What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN, right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you, and as you can see, I got two goats here with me today to talk a little NBA. Man, it's just kind of creeped up on me, guys. The season tips off on Tuesday. I appreciate you guys joining me kind of last minute to preview this season. We're going to talk about some win totals. We'll talk NBA championship odds, MVP odds, all the good stuff, and try to help you guys out if you're doing some last minute NBA drafts. I know you guys have been heavy into the underdog fantasy draft, so I want to pick your guys' brains. And joining me here on this show today, we got Stefano Vaccarino at Big Money Play, the CMO of FTN Network, and then Zac Graham, aka Kwisenberg DFS, the co-host of the FTN NBA podcast. Thanks, guys, for taking the time here today. Steph, we'll start with you, because for those who are looking to get involved with not just some NBA season long and some futures and stuff, which you'll have over at ftnbets.com, but just the NBA DFS package, man, I'm seeing early bird after early bird after early bird. A lot of people have jumped in and already taken advantage of the price discount, but this will be the last time to get the price discount, correct?
Correct. So, first off, thank you for having me. Huge fan, Chris. And you're the real GOAT, not me. But anyway, yeah, we have.
You didn't even have to say that. I didn't pay you.
I had to. It was in my show sheet, so just had to follow on the deliverables. But no, so we have. Our NBA DFS package is awesome. Not only do you have access to the real GOAT, Zac Graham, Mr. Kwisenberg, who's on this show. You have Fast Eddie Fear. You have Alex Blickel. We have an optimizer that's included in our package. Player and ownership projections, and ownership projections for single entry formats too, which is rare. You don't really find that everywhere. Right now, so our early bird special is $249.99 for the NBA season. That includes preseason, and that's basically winding down and through the NBA finals. So basically the entire year, you don't need to pay an extra cent, I should say, for any other NBA portion of the season. And, that final price is going up to $299.99 after today. This is probably going to be the last day. We limited it to the first 100 people. I believe there's probably 15 or 20 packages left right now off the top of my head. That will more than likely 95% chance sell out by the end of the day. We've been crushing preseason. I'll let Zac touch on that. We've had a lot of green beans, as we like to say, during this NBA preseason, and we expect to have a lot more during the regular season. And if you're looking to just try us out monthly, it's $59.99 for the month, which give us a shot. We highly recommend it. You're going to improve as a DFS player.
That's what I was going to say. The monthly package too. Like if you're on the fence and you feel like the $249.99 is a little bit too steep for you, like you said, I mean, it's going to go up after today. And I'm seeing a lot of people just take advantage of this price discount. I saw a lot of green screens last year. I'm seeing them already. As Zac, as Steph mentions, the preseason has been hot to start. Thanks to you and a lot of sharp minds over at FTN. What are some things that you're going to be involved with throughout the season? Like, also the Discord is so key. I mean, you're going to get the projections, you're going to get the ownership projections, the optimizer, the streams, the Discord. But I mean, just to have the opportunity to chat, Zac, to yourself, Steph, and other people, I think is a huge plus, and you don't really see it a lot in the industry.
Yeah, so I think obviously all the tools, like Steph mentioned, ADVP tool, splits tool, the exposures, cheat sheets, like those are all things that are going to help you become a better DFS player and help your process throughout the day. But for me, the biggest thing is the Discord and the FTN community. Like I've been in multiple DFS communities over the 6 or 7 years that I played. And FTN, not just because they pay me to say it, but like this is my favorite place that I've ever been in terms of my DFS experience. So as you guys mentioned, like I'm always in the basketball DFS streets, not just NBA regular season, whether it's summer league. We did some good work with the summer games this past summer. And you mentioned preseason. I have to shout out Josh Gross for the preseason minutes projections. Like he's one of the sharpest minds in the industry, not just for NBA, but for my purposes as a hoops head, he's really been crushing it. And Kyle Murray, who's kind of the opto extraordinaire, has been taking those minutes projections, putting them into the optimizer, and I know that some of the subs have been taking advantage of that as well. So it's been a great time over the last 2 weeks. Tonight is the final night of the NBA preseason. So if you want to jump in, you can, take advantage of that last early bird price today, or get in on a monthly package and join us tonight. It should be fun.
Yeah, 8 games on the hard court. You know, Josh Gross is yet to join me on the show. He's a busy dude, but I mention him, I think, maybe once a week. Like, when I talk about this, not just NBA, but I mean, across every sport, we're talking DFS here, but the betting package as well. Something cool that we're doing at FTN is you just get all the bets across every single sport. And he's one of those guys that just like checks the boxes for every single sport. And it's crazy, you know. Oh my goodness. Is he ever? Like, yeah, you get the MLB, you get the NBA, you get NFL, you get tennis, like you get everything with Gross. But yeah, you'll have everybody's picks across the board. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. I just want to talk Steph. Like, before we get into championship odds and MVPs, like who's the most improved team? Like, what was the biggest offseason move in your opinion? That to me, it's like Westbrook and Lakers. Like Lakers always come to mind, right? I saw last night Westbrook and LeBron. Like, it looked kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. Like as an NBA fan, and it was kind of neat to see those two on the hard court. What do you think was the biggest storyline or the biggest storyline heading into this season?
So I don't think it's the Lakers. I'll probably touch on the Lakers when we talk about odds, like finals odds. But I think the most improved team is probably the Chicago Bulls. They're probably the team in the East that's going to hop in and take out one of those teams that was a playoff team last year, right? They're good. They just DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine. They are a deep team. Patrick Williams is someone who they drafted last year who's only going to get better. I'm actually very high on, who's one of those kind of versatile wings that can guard 1 through 5 on the floor. Who's only going to improve it and showed really good spurts last year. So I don't love them, but in terms of most improved team, I think they're the team that probably takes the biggest win jump this year. Now, I don't think they have any shot of winning the title, but I do think they have a shot to maybe surprise people, kind of like the Hawks did last year and be a top 5 seed. Right now, I project them as like a 6 seed, so I'm not projecting them to do that. But again, they were a non-playoff team, and the East is much improved, so I have them kind of solidly in that playoff picture in the East. I think it's a big jump.
Zach, what about you? Maybe flip side, you can touch on that as well as maybe the team that took a major step back in the offseason.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been kind of focusing on looking at these teams is not necessarily your additions in free agency or through the trade market or the draft, but injuries. And on the positive side, he's not back yet, but if Klay Thompson comes back for the Warriors and is 80% of what he was, over that Warriors dynasty that we saw at the latter end of the last decade, like this team's going to be extremely dangerous. Steph Curry is still there doing his thing. I think you could argue that Steph is a better player now than when they were winning all of those championships, since he's kind of had to do more by himself with Klay out for the better part of the last 2 years. But if he comes back alongside Draymond Green, Draymond is better when those two Splash Brothers are out there and healthy. They've added so much young talent around him. If they can get anything out of James Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, all that type of stuff, I think this team is going to be extremely dangerous come playoff time if they can stick together. And again, some of those young guys I mentioned could maybe be moved at the trade deadline for another piece for this team. And you can't forget about Andrew Wiggins. Then kind of on the flip side, huge hit to the Clippers to lose Kawhi Leonard for the majority of the season. Obviously battled injuries kind of throughout his career. So it's going to be tough sledding, I think, for the Clippers. I'm kind of predicting a huge season out of Paul George. And in the same vein, the Denver Nuggets without Jamal Murray for the majority of the regular season, I think they're deep enough to kind of tread water and hang out near the top of the Western Conference. But those 3 players to me are just huge impacts out West.
Chris,
that's a big loss.
Can I talk about one player? One team that I
Dude, you could do what you want. Yeah, you could do whatever you want on this show.
This is gonna be painful to a lot of listeners right now. But I think the Toronto Raptors are a team that's purposefully going to lose a lot of games. And that's a good thing. That's the right thing they should do. But this is a team, again, like they're not a contender anymore. They had their run. That was amazing. And they're kind of every signal that we see that they're sending is saying that they're in a full rebuild right now, saying that Scotty Barnes is going to have a huge role. And that's awesome. I think Scotty Barnes looked awesome this preseason. This is the right direction for the Raptors. But this is a team, again, that and if you're a Raptors fan, I think you want them to lose as many games as possible because they're close to being really good again because they do have a lot of talent. And I think they're going to take their time bringing Siakam back. They'll probably take their time getting Boucher back. And they're going to kind of let the young guys, play. But this is a team that, again, you should want them to not be very good if you are a Toronto Raptors fan this year.
And you're right. It probably hurts a lot of Raptors fans to hear that, but I think you're spot on. I was expecting one of you guys to say that the Raptors were going to be one of those teams that one of the ones that went in the opposite direction. Of course, life begins without Kyle Lowry, now a member of Miami. Guys, we'll take a quick break and we'll get into, I have some division odd questions for you, as well as some win totals, and I want to talk about NBA odds as well as MVP. So stick around. Mean Streets continues right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney, Stefano Vaccarino, and Zac Graham here with you talking a little NBA. We're just days away from the season tipping off. On Tuesday, we got Nets and Bucks, Warriors and Lakers. And speaking of those Lakers, I want to talk a little bit more about them, Steph. I just want to dive in here into the NBA division odds because most of them, I mean, you got the Bucks here, minus 900 favorites to win the Central. You got the Mavs, it's minus 230 to win the Southwest. I suppose Memphis could give them a bit of a run here. Brooklyn minus 280. The 76ers, a lot of question marks surrounding Ben Simmons right now. I also want to talk about the Northwestern division with Utah. I think Denver or Portland could potentially make a run there. And then the Southeast is tight. But I want to just talk about this Pacific division because we've seen the winner here go to the finals since 2014. It's been the Suns last year, the Lakers, the Warriors. Somebody seems to come out of here and go to the finals. The Lakers are favored at plus 105, the Suns at plus 220, the Warriors, which Zach, you talked about, at plus 425, and then the Clippers, of course, without Kawhi here for a bit, at 9-1. What do you think of the division? Is there any value on the Suns or the Warriors here, Steph?
I think the Warriors are great value. I took their over 47.5 wins this year. Everything Zach said already, I completely agree with. This team is good. They're really good and they're deep. And Steph Curry is better. And if Klay Thompson is just again 80% Klay Thompson, I'm just reiterating exactly what Zach said. I think this is actually the best team in the Pacific Division. I'm not as high on the Lakers as everyone else is. And listen, they are talented enough. They have enough talent that they're gonna grind their way to 50+ wins. They're going to be probably go into the second round of the playoffs. This team has no shooting. This team makes no sense. I was watching their preseason game yesterday, and yesterday was their regular season tune-up game where we're going to see a lot of the regular season rotations, at least early in the season. They're playing Rajon Rondo, Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, and Anthony Davis together in the same lineup.
What
and
year is it?
It makes absolutely no sense. They have no shooting. Their best shooter is Wayne Ellington, and he's hurt right now. I think, unless he got waived. I'm not sure if he got waived, but that's part of the problem, right? It's Kent Bazemore was a good signing. I like Kent Bazemore, but he can't be your best shooter to play around Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James. And the thing, they've alluded to the fact that Anthony Davis is going to play the 5 a lot this year. But you didn't see in their tune-up game yesterday where he played the 4 next to Dwight Howard or DeAndre Jordan the entire game. This team does not have the shooting to get away with that in the current NBA. They cannot be playing Anthony Davis at the 4 with Dwight and or DeAndre Jordan. And just this is the best division in the NBA, probably. The Suns are really good. The Clippers are they took a hit, but they're still not a bad team. We're not talking about a Rockets level team here with the Clippers. They're still going to be kind of a feisty team that still has some talent. The Warriors are going to be better, and the Kings are basically playing for their lives. Essentially, if it doesn't work for the Kings this year, I would hope that they would blow it up. So I am not as high on the Lakers as everyone else is, unless they are able to acquire a really good shooter. And I'm not sure if they are able to do that, right, with how their cap situation is and what their assets are. I thought Buddy Hield would have been a better fit for this team than Russell Westbrook, and that is not a knock on Russell Westbrook. I like Russell Westbrook, but for what this team needs, they don't need Russell Westbrook. They need an outside scoring threat, and they just do not have that whatsoever.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at just, the Lakers and LeBron's the first time I've ever seen them ranked outside like the top 20 or 25 or so, like ESPN and Yahoo from a season-long standpoint. He's getting up there in age. Before we get to the NBA odds, I was just looking again at some other divisions. I mean, Miami and Atlanta, you're not going to see Charlotte or Washington compete for the division. There's no real value in going Miami minus 125, but you could go Miami to win and Atlanta to come second and get that at plus 200 at BetMGM. What do you think, Zach, of the Northwest Division with Utah at minus 250? I know we just talked about Jamal Murray. That's a big loss. Can Denver, get that division? Is there any value at plus 320, or is there anything with Portland at 750? I know they have a lot of defensive issues, but could you see one of those two teams winning that division or Utah taking a step back?
Yeah, I'm definitely off Portland. I've kind of been off them the entire offseason. I think there's still some turmoil between Damian Lillard and the franchise that hasn't really bubbled over yet. It's kind of receded since the end of the year, but obviously that was kind of brewing around the Chauncey Billups hire at head coach, kind of combining that with Dame's frustration of not being able to get out of the West all these years, kind of with the same squad. So if I'm like, this division's almost a stay away for me. I'm a big Utah fan, especially in the regular season, but Mike Conley's health's kind of been a question mark as he also gets up there in age. And again, with Jamal Murray out, it would have to be a Utah injury or two, and Denver again treading water, waiting for Jamal Murray, in my opinion, to come back to really make a push for the division. So Utah would be my pick, but I think just at minus 250, it's kind of a stay away for me. If you want to get a favorite, if I can be so bold to go to another division, your boys in Dallas, Chris. I think there's only one person getting injured in this division that could change the outcome, and that's Luka Doncic. As long as Luka is healthy, this team in a division with Memphis, who's to me is the only competitor. Houston, I think, is going to be tanking again. I'm hoping as a Spurs fan, the San Antonio team is tanking. And I think the Pelicans are in a little bit of trouble. So if I'm going to take a divisional favorite, it's actually going to be Dallas for me at minus 230.
I was kind of disappointed with their offseason, but we're not here to talk about the Mavs. We're talking about some good teams. Let's bring up the NBA championship odds. Producer Tino, if you have those, we'll talk about this for a little second here. We got the Nets favored the Lakers 4-1. The Bucks, obviously winners last year at 9-1. The Warriors at 11-1. Utah at 15-1. I agree, Zach, with the Utah take as well. I mean, Rudy Gobert has played a lot of basketball lately, and then some Olympic stuff there. I think he's the key to stay healthy, but the defense is going to be legit. The Suns at 17-1, Clippers, 76ers, Nuggets in there, and we're getting a little bit longer odds here. Atlanta 35 and Miami 25. Steph, there's no real value on the Nets, but is that your pick to go?
It's tough. It's tough. So you can get them around at plus 240 right now. I think they're the best team in the East right now. This is going to pain me to say, but I think the Bucks at plus 900 might be the best value. They're still really, really
wow.
Don't clip that, please. It really depends if Kyrie Irving ends up playing this year. I think. Not that the Nets in that series against the Bucks, right? Even with just two of the three, they dominated the first two. It looked like they were going to sweep just with two of them, and they're good enough to win the championship with just James Harden and Kevin Durant. I firmly believe that. It's just a lot harder. It's a lot easier when you have all three of them. And so if I had all three of them, I would say plus 240, plus 205, whatever it is right now, is it really good value for the Nets. Without Kyrie, I'm just like, it's fine. I still think they're a championship contender. I don't know if the value is there. Where for the Bucks at plus 900, I think the Warriors are between plus 900 and plus 1100. I'm really high on the Warriors. I think Klay is going to make a pretty good comeback. They're really good and they're deep. They're just loaded. I think the Lakers are bad value. I have no interest in the Jazz. So it's really kind of like it's the Nets, the Warriors, the Bucks. Maybe if you want to throw in the Suns, but I think the Bucks are the best value. Don't tell Joe Mets. Let's erase this from the record.
Dude, yeah, I'm telling them immediately after this show. There's no question about that. You know, there's usually, like, last year I felt like was kind of surprising, although Zach, you had the Bucks, but I don't think a lot of people had the Suns. I remember talking, I think Steph, you may have been there, and maybe Kyle Murray, and I said at one point, I think Utah and the 76ers were the best teams in the NBA. And I said, what's the chances of these two, getting to the finals? And I think we gave them like a combined 1% chance. Zach, I mean, credit to you, man. You had the Bucks in there. You had them going the distance. Do you like them as well to repeat here? Is this like, should I have just brought on Joe Metz and we should have just talked about the Bucks the entire time? What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like I agree with Steph. I feel like I'm becoming like a Bucks homer, even though I'm not a Bucks fan. I do think that's good value. They kind of just are consistently disrespected, even though they won the title last year. Like, sure, was there some injury luck that kind of plagued other teams and helped the Bucks? Of course, but that happens every single year. So I think plus 900 is great for them. And I'm kind of glad that you guys cut off the graphic at plus 3,500, because I think that's about as far as I would go just taking wild shots at title contenders here. Because I think Atlanta, they're so young. If they can stay healthy, both their young guys and kind of the veterans, Clint Capella just came back last night, got his first preseason action. Danilo Gallinari, obviously a veteran. So I think 3,500 for the Hawks is not crazy, but Denver, again, I'm going back. They should have Jamal Murray. This team is extremely deep at every position. And obviously the reigning MVP there. So 20-1 for Denver is a value that I like as well.
Steph, you got to get out of here. We got about a minute and a half. I know you had some win totals. Do you want to share a couple of your favorites here before you boot?
Yeah, so you can no longer get the Nets at 54.5. That was on Caesars for a bit. They're at 56.5 now, consensus, but over 56.5, even with two of those like even without Kyrie, it's too low. Like, this is a 60-win team. I kind of feel the same way about the Bucks too. I think the Bucks are at 53.5. Both of those teams are I'll put it through. They're like 57 plus win teams. They're very, very good. I have the Rockets under 27.5. Now, wow, 27.5 wins in an 82 game season. Why would you take the under? This team doesn't want to win. It's as simple as that. They have no interest in winning. They might start the year like 10-10, and then you're going to start to see Christian Wood sit every other game. You're going to start to see maybe KPJ sit if they're really winning, but they're not going to really win. I mean, the West is still a good division. That's a good conference. The Rockets do not want to win. Under 27.5. This team is probably going to win 21, 22 games tops. I want to take the Magic under 20.5 because I think this team might not win a game the entire season. They're going to win a game, don't worry. But it's too low for me to take the under 20.5. So I'm going to take the 27.5 for the Rockets. And then Warriors. We've talked about the Warriors a lot, over 47.5. I think this is a 50-win team. I think Klay's going to come back. Even if Klay doesn't come back, and he's obviously on track to come back sometime in December, but let's say even if he doesn't, I think this line is still kind of right there, and they could still beat it. This team is deep. They're young. They're good. Steph Curry's improved. Draymond Green's shot has kind of improved a little bit too. So I like over 47.5 for the Warriors.
A lot of value on the Warriors. Zach, hang around in the next segment because we're going to talk MVP odds. Steph is certainly interesting there as well. Yeah, I mean, Houston's not the lowest. 27.5. You got Orlando at 22, which you kind of alluded to. OKC at 23.5. We got the Pistons at 24.5 and Cleveland at 26.5. Some bad basketball teams in the NBA. Brooklyn does lead the way at 56.5. The Bucks 54.5. The Jazz and the Lakers at 52.5, and then the Suns at 51.5. Steph, appreciate your time, dude. Thank you so much. I encourage everybody. I mean, FTN has you covered in terms of NBA. So check out FTN at daily.com/pricing, FTNbets.com/pricing. You can get every single sport, all the bets right there for you. Zach, hang around. I want to get your thoughts on a couple of sleepers, help people out for their fantasy basketball drafts, and I also want to get your favorite win totals as well. Mean Streets continues right here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on a Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and Zac Graham, Quisenberg, DFS. He can help you out not only on the hardcore, but in the NFL as well. He's pumping out some super draft videos for us over at ftndaily.com, ftnfantasy.com. Just heard word before we got back on here that Nick Chubb is not going to play this weekend. A bit of a surprise. I didn't really see that coming. Yeah. I got some picks later on in the show. I was on Zona plus 3.5. I like that a little bit more. Stick around for the end of the show. We'll have some NFL props and picks and some DFS plays, but I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit more, dude, with just some NBA stuff. So what are some teams that you're feeling here for win totals? Are you in on the Brooklyn one? It does make a lot of sense, even though Kyrie, like, this does seem like pretty much close to a 60-win team.
Yeah, man, I'm glad we got Stefano out of here because I'm so high on Brooklyn this year, and it's not like I'm not going out on a limb there. They've got three of the best players in the NBA when Kyrie's around, but even with him out, like, I'm just being repetitive from what Steph said. Like, I'm on the over for Brooklyn. I would still be surprised if this team doesn't win 60 games, even if Kyrie doesn't see the floor. Like, they brought in Patty Mills, obviously, near and dear to my heart, but LaMarcus Aldridge is back. They drafted Cam Thomas. Joe Harris is still there. Blake Griffin came back. Like, this team is stacked. So I'm not super worried, especially about their over-under for the regular season, even if Kyrie doesn't play. But two others that I'm looking at, something that I've pushed kind of the last couple months is the Knicks over 42.5. Now, I could see this number being very close, but this is a team that even if you think they overachieved in the shortened season last year, 41-31 in the 72 games that we did get in last regular season. So adding 10 games, even if you think they take a step back, I have a hard time seeing this team going under that number. It's actually come up. It was 41.5, Chris, for the longest time, and now at 42.5. I still like the over because if you know anything about Coach Tom Thibodeau, like, he's going to run his best players into the ground. For over-unders, that's perfect for us. Like, we know the best players are going to be out there for massive minutes. So I have a lot of confidence in that over on the Knicks. And then I'm really worried about the New Orleans Pelicans. Like, turmoil with the head coach, some turnover with the roster. Like, you get rid of Lonzo Ball and bring in Tomas Satoransky, Devontae Graham. Those guys are fine in their own right, but I don't think they really improved in their backcourt. And I have major concerns about Zion Williamson's health. Like, we've seen some of the media day pictures, the comparisons, the side-by-sides of his physique. I've been worried about this longer than that, though. Like, guys who are that big, typically they're taller, but when you have lower body injuries on guys with frames like that, it rarely gets better as your career goes on. And I know he's young, but this guy hasn't stayed healthy for any significant stretch of time since he really burst onto the national scene at Duke. So I'm on the under for the New Orleans Pelicans. I do think that, and this can kind of transition into best ball, get your Brandon Ingram shares in season long in best ball, because I have some worries about Zion, and without him, this team isn't going anywhere fast.
Yeah, that's a good call. And, you brought up Paul George, too, without Kawhi, right? We're just going to see those guys have a lot of usage this season. I think they're great targets. I've been following along. I wanted to join you guys. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it there one night, but I was watching you guys on the NBA FTN podcast and talking about Paul George, like, early on when you guys were doing best balls. What did you start, like, almost 3-4 weeks ago now? I mean, he was a terrific value at that point.
Yeah, maybe late August. We've been doing it for a while.
I dig it. You can go back and check those episodes out and, just feel what you guys are absolutely feeling as well. And it gets you set up for your drafts. I'd like, people were hard on the Knicks with the additions, right? Like Kemba and Fournier, but I didn't mind those additions. And what you said with Tibbs, I mean, he is a guy that does play his players. So that is certainly something to monitor when you're taking overs and things like that. And maybe just betting on them, spreads throughout the season. Keep an eye on all of that. Okay, before we get to some other guys that you're feeling or that you have shares of, let's bring up those NBA odds, Tino. And here we got Luka favored at plus 380, KD at 6-1, Embiid at 7-1, Giannis at 9-1, Steph again, like, just really good value with this Warriors squad this year at 9-1, Dame 14, Joker 15, LeBron 15, and I also think Harden at 20-1 is pretty interesting as well. He's 40-1 to lead the NBA in points scored. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but I'll be honest, I may sprinkle a little something on that. And then Trae Young at 20-1, I think also pretty interesting. What do you make of this list? Is it really just Steph? Is there any other value on this board? Can Joker do it again?
Yeah. So from if I'm betting on this, right? I think James Harden is the unquestioned play here to me at 20-1. Like, even if Kyrie's going to play, I like that value. I think he was closer to 2,500 before kind of all the Kyrie vaccine thing started. But still at 20-1, if Kyrie's off the court the entire season, like we've seen James Harden win an MVP before down in Houston. And if this team is going to lead the league in wins, like I think they are, that's usually a good recipe to win the MVP. So Kevin Durant, I think, is maybe a little overlooked. A lot of people kind of in my circle have been clamoring to get on that James Harden number. So I wouldn't hate, sprinkling some on KD. I think at plus 600 there, but 20-1 for Harden is just insane value. And I'm actually going to, if I'm picking who I think is going to be the MVP, like my chalk, it's the chalk on that board too. It's Luka Doncic. I had him as my MVP last year. Didn't quite come through, but I think again, he's just going to take another step this year. I'm a big Luka fan, so I think he would be my the pick with my heart, I should say, rather than my bankroll.
It's going to be weird in Dallas not to see Carlisle there. For me, just seeing him for years. I mean, I just have so much respect for him. I just think he's such a stud. But yeah, back with the Pacers again. So, yeah, I agree. Harden, right? At 20-1, that's like pretty good value because I don't know. I don't want to dive into this too much, but do you think Kyrie plays this season?
Man, I'm starting to lean no. Kind of like Stefano said, and obviously, it's almost like me and Steph talk every day, right? Coming with some of these repetitive takes, but I just I think I haven't really seen something like this in my lifetime as like a relatively young dude still. But I think back to things that happened kind of in the social, political environment and how certain athletes, not necessarily in the NBA, but just across the sports landscape, have kind of taken a different path. Like, I guess you could look over to the WNBA, right? Maya Moore, one of the best women's players, different reason for her, kind of cutting her career short or at least taking a hiatus. But we see high-level athletes do things like that all the time and miss a season or retire early. So I don't think Kyrie's bluffing, man. I think he could sit out the whole year.
I think so too, honestly. And I agree with both of you guys. Like, I think the Nets are good enough. Your guy Patty Mills now joins that squad, but like they have some pieces to, I think, make a run. But honestly, I think they need Kyrie to win that ship. That's kind of truly how I feel. We only have a couple minutes left. I just want a couple other storylines that I wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, you mentioned Zion. It is too bad. I also agree with you as well. I'm a little bit worried about his career, like the trajectory of it. And, such a crazy play when he blew out his shoe. He's just such a big dude. And I have him in a couple keeper leagues that I just had to kind of throw him back into the pool this year. Unfortunately, I just didn't want to have him on, it's just sitting away on my roster. Okay. Ben Simmons. Is this relationship repairable? Is he just done with the 76ers? Here's so many mixed reports. What do you think? Is he, yes or no, is he going to be with the 76ers all year long?
That I'm a little uncertain of. I've kind of thought the entire summer that he would be moved. I didn't think that the situation after kind of that disastrous series with, obviously bad fourth quarter stats and him, the play that was shown a million times of him kind of passing up that dunk or a layup to pass to Matisse Thybulle. But man, this is probably a hot take, but I'm looking at the injury report for tonight, last day of the preseason. Philly's sitting out pretty much everybody in their main rotation. You know who's not on the injury report? Ben Simmons. Wow. He reported to the team. Apparently nobody knew he was showing up to the arena, right? Which kind of just adds another crazy chapter to this saga, but he's not on the injury report tonight. He's been staying in shape away from the team. So I wish I could bet on that, that he would be active tonight. I think Ben Simmons is going to play.
Nice. Well, I'm rooting for the guy because you could tell. I mean, we had Alex Blickel on here, who's a big 76ers fan. He took an interesting take. I think a lot of people in Philadelphia, they just want to see him go, and they say, who are you to, not show up? And you mentioned he's now shown up, but some maybe just the way he was treated inside the organization. Alex talked about like some mental health stuff and how they just kind of treated him unfairly. And, I think, for me, I am rooting for him. I'd like to see him, I'd like to see things work out in Philadelphia. I'm not ready to say that he's just going to be a bust. I also would like to see him work on that jump shot, just get a little bit of confidence as well. I think, he's a terrific defender, and I think he could add maybe a change of scenery. Zach is just kind of what he needs, but we'll see. We'll get you out of here on this. Who are some guys that you have a lot of shares of? Who are some guys that people should have maybe on their short list if they're doing some best ball drafts or some just season-long drafts here this weekend?
Yeah, so particularly for best ball, and I'll try to speed through this because I have obviously a ton of best ball takes doing this for the last few weeks or month plus. Up at the top, I mentioned Paul George. I think even though his ADP has come up to around 10 or 11 on most sites, I have him ranked as high as 7, depending on where you're playing. I think you can look back to what he did in Oklahoma City, and he was alongside Russell Westbrook that year. He got third in MVP voting that year and had massive fantasy numbers. So I love him mid to late first round. Kevin Durant and James Harden kind of now with Kyrie presumed out, kind of extend that first tier of guys, which would include Giannis, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic. And now I think you can safely lump Harden and Durant in there. Values in terms of guys that I have a lot of at the end of drafts. Precious Achiuwa has been outstanding in the preseason for the Toronto Raptors. I think if he doesn't start at the beginning of the season, he's going to earn that spot as we go. I would not be surprised to see him start next week in game 1. His ADP has been rocketing up with his preseason performance. So I do have a lot of Precious. And then Patrick Williams for the Bulls had a big ankle injury about 4 or 5 weeks ago. He's back scrimmaging with the Bulls, second-year guy. You can get him almost free at the end of drafts, alongside LaMarcus Aldridge, who is back. The heart condition scare, seemingly in the past, or he's been cleared. So this guy, a very productive fantasy player, or too productive, even off the bench for the Nets, to be going in the 16th round or sometimes undrafted. And then I'll touch on Killian Hayes kind of as the last thing. You got to make sure if you're playing best ball, know the format. If you're on a site like Underdog or DraftKings, they have playoff rounds. And so you can actually go through, figure out which teams have more games during those weeks than the rest of the league, and kind of get a leg up there. So I'll give you a hint. Detroit and Houston, Killian Hayes is essentially free at the end of drafts, another sophomore guy coming into his second year. Injuries the first year kind of court. I kind of like getting that late free exposure to the Detroit Pistons. If you're playing on a site like Drafters, this is kind of the format how I think best ball should be done. No playoffs. You kind of throw that out the window. Everybody gets 82 games, assuming health.
Sometimes in fantasy, I think in particular in the NBA, and you know this when DFS, when injuries happen, I mean, but on bad teams, like we talked about the Raptors and the Pistons, there's an opportunity for guys that just kind of people forget about. They don't want to draft players on those teams, but yet their usage rate could be certainly high, and there's no competition for playing time, so the minutes are definitely going to be there as well. Zach, appreciate your time, man. Always a sharp NBA mind here, guys. Check out FTN at daily.com/pricing. Check out the NBA FTN podcast. Zach will have you covered throughout the season with all the hoops talk. Appreciate you, dude. And we're going to continue here. No Nick Chubb. Can the Browns win against the undefeated Arizona Cardinals? We're going to talk some NFL here next on Mean Streets. Keep her locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. We're going to fix the camera here live as we transition into the NFL. I got some props here for you. Man, the Eagles burned me yesterday. I needed more stuff from the Philadelphia Eagles. They couldn't move the football. So let's turn the page and get into this weekend's props. I got a couple KC guys here that I'm feeling. I like Travis Kelce over 6.5 receptions, and I like Darrell Williams at over 11.5 rushing attempts, plus money for Williams, no CEH. He's had a game so far this season with 10 carries on the ground, and that was with CEH there. So Washington hasn't been the best defense that I think a lot of people thought as a top 5 defense. They're allowing a lot to running backs, to quarterbacks, and to wide receivers. I mean, KC's offense has been fine. It's been their defense. They've allowed at least 29 points in every game so far this season, but Tyreek Hill is looking iffy to play this week as well. I mean, he was downgraded midweek. I don't know if he plays or not, but for Travis Kelce, he's been a little bit quiet over the past couple weeks. 6.5 grabs. I got to jump on this. Even if Tyreek Hill plays, I still think Kelce can get to this number. James Robinson has cleared this number in 3 straight games. Jacksonville in the first 3 games of the season, they were really pass heavy. They weren't really running the football. It was sprinkled in with Robinson and Carlos Hyde, and there just wasn't really, an identity on offense. I think we're starting to see a little bit more of an identity. They're running the football a little bit more. Trevor Lawrence has got 4 straight games with 20 rushing yards on the ground. He's at 23.5. I think he's interesting. But James Robinson here against Miami, we've got to keep in mind, this is a London game, so you want to get on this one fairly early. I believe that one starts at 9:30 Eastern. But for James Robinson, he's just been a guy that's been getting a heavy workload. 15 for 88, 18 for 78, and last week 18 for $149. Miami has allowed the second most fantasy points to running back, so it's a pretty good spot for James Robinson. I got Amon-Ra St. Brown in there. Is this a guy who's just been, over the past 2 weeks, just getting targets and getting volume and opportunity, and that's really the name of the game here. Quintez Cephas is now on IR. TJ Hawkinson isn't 100%. Teams are really focusing in on Hawkinson. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown could be like a Cooper Kupp for Jared Goff. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a difference between the two skill sets, but we're just looking at volume and opportunity on a weak Detroit team here. And the Bengals are going to score some points. As you see, I got Joe Burrow there. More on him in a second. But 16 targets and 13 grabs in the last 2 games for an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Really starting to trend up. I think he's definitely worthy of a fantasy pickup as well. I would play him as a flex. I got him ranked as a top 45 wide receiver in a full point setting. I think he's got a little bit more value there. Playing in the slot, inside the slot, I think it's a good opportunity for him to top 4.5 grabs. And I really like the over on his 53.5 receiving yards. As for Joe Burrow, I was sitting here thinking that I would take the passing attempts at 37.5 plus money. I just really like this opportunity for Joe Burrow and the Bengals against the Lions. Burrow's looked a little bit better lately. He's cleared to play. I know he was in the hospital right after the game due to a throat issue, but he's looking like he's full go here the past couple days at practice. Joe Mixon also full go. My thinking was that they wouldn't run the rock a lot with Joe Mixon, but even still with him active, I do like Joe Burrow to get back there, drop back a few times, and we're just seeing a full core in terms of their wide receivers now. We got Jamar Chase, who's been lighting it up. T. Higgins returned last week, and Tyler Boyd inside the slot, and CJ Uzomah gives him a little bit of something too. So I like Joe Burrow. I think he's a terrific streamer if you can get him on the waiver wire. I think he's a top 12 quarterback this week. We're going to continue the NFL talk. Got some DFS plays here soon, but first we'll talk about some picks. I got some money line, some parlays, some spreads, a teaser for you, a lot more NFL talk here on Mean Streets. Keep her locked. All right, a couple week 6 NFL picks here for you. We've hit a couple teasers. Teasers always look so good, but this is kind of how I'm going to start here. I really do like this teaser on the board here. I like the Cowboys. You got a +3 here. This is a 7-point teaser, and we got 6 games on the board here. So the Cowboys not to lose by more than 3. We got the Rams against the Giants to win by a field goal. We got the Chargers against Baltimore, and as you can see on the money line, I'm backing them. I mean, it's their plus money. We talked with Jill Gallant on Thursday yesterday. We both like this team to continue rolling on offense, and you see, I think both sides will score some points, like the over 51.5. I got the Packers here just to beat the Bears. I think that happens, and then KC to win against Washington, and then Buffalo as well to win against Tennessee. So that is 5-1, a 7-point teaser. And then against the spread, I mentioned earlier that Nick Chubb is not going to play in this game. I don't know what that's going to do to the odds. I mean, Arizona is undefeated here. I think Cleveland is a really tough environment to go play football. I really respect what the Browns all over the place. I like their defense. I like their offense. I love their run game. Their offensive line, I think, is the best in football. Kareem Hunt is certainly capable we've seen it before. We saw it last year. Kareem Hunt, 20-plus touches when Chubb is out, and he's productive. He's actually a little bit more efficient when Chubb is on the field. But I'm going to back Arizona here. I think that, Cleveland still wins the game, but 3.5, I got to jump on this. All the money is coming in on Dallas. I don't know if this is a trap. Tino, I don't know if you have your mic live here, but dude, I got to back Dallas here against the Pats. They're among the leaders in takeaways. The defense is playing good. I don't think they're as good as what they've shown us so far, but the offense is legit. And New England, I'm just not buying into. Mac Jones is not a guy that I have a lot of faith in. He's turning the ball over. I don't like their run game. You see Damian Harris has just been scripted out of the game plan for multiple times so far this season. I don't expect them to do a whole lot on offense. I know Bill Belichick is going to do his best to take away probably CeeDee Lamb, but you got a nice 1-2 punch in Zeke and Pollard, and Dak is just playing really good football. And I don't know, the Colts are not good enough to be favored by 10 points against anybody in the league. Are you kidding me? The secondary is atrocious. We just saw Houston have a really good game against New England was at home, but it was against Bill Belichick, and Davis Mills looked pretty good. So I got to take the Texans here at +10. Another upset that I have is Jacksonville over Miami this weekend. And then you see the parlay with the Bills, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and Green Bay. I will be honest. I'll say this, and I probably shouldn't. Anytime that I'm feeling a team this much in Dallas, maybe you should just proceed with caution, because you see I got them to win by a field goal. I'm taking them on the money line at -160. I'm getting them in my parlays. I have them in the teaser as well. I'm kind of all in here on Denver. And then Las Vegas and Denver, I just think it's going to be, or I'm all in on Dallas. Las Vegas and Denver, I think it's just going to be a heavy dose of running the football. I don't think we'll see a lot of offense there. I typically just take unders with the Broncos. The under has hit in every one of their games but one last week against the Steelers. All right, I got a couple DFS plays here on the way out. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here one final time. Sorry to cram all this NFL news in towards the end. I really just wanted to have a heavy NBA show to get you set up for the NBA season. We may have a little bit of NBA talk as well. On Monday will be the final day for you to get into some, just get some props and some futures in there because the season does tip off on Tuesday. But I wanted to also touch NFL because I know that's what anybody really cares about. Let's be honest. So I got a couple DFS plays. I'm going to be live with Kyle Murray at 5 Eastern to talk about some more NFL DFS plays, but this is kind of what I'm feeling, some top plays. I got a larger video over on our FTN YouTube page. So these are top plays. Now, I'm not breaking any news with these players, but if you're playing cash or you're just looking for guys to play up at the top and get different elsewhere with your lineups, you can do that, and we'll talk some value with Kyle Murray a little bit later on. So Tyreek Hill, I made this board a couple days ago. Maybe just cross him off your list or just keep an eye on his status moving forward. Patrick Mahomes, don't really need to spend a lot of time on that. I mean, Washington 29th in pass DVOA. I think Heineke is interesting on the other side there. The Chiefs are dead last in pass DVOA. Both teams inside the top 3 in allowing fantasy points to quarterbacks. I mentioned Burrow in the last segment. Just Detroit, 10 yards per pass attempt is the #1 mark in the NFL. 22 plays of at least 20 yards, also inside the top 3 in the NFL. Eckler there, I just don't think you can fade him. He's balling out. He's got 22 fantasy points in 4 straight games, 66 in his last 2. He kind of lives in that 11 to 17 carry mark, but also 5 to 9 target mark as well. 23 grabs on 25 targets in his last 4 games and 6 touchdowns in his last 3 contests. More red zone usage this year already than last season. Darrell Henderson is certainly interesting to me. Got the Rams heavy favorites here, 15 fantasy points in all 4 of his games. He's averaging 17 over his last 3. He's got 3 touchdowns over his last 4 games. And something cool that we have over at FTN and our NFL optimizer is points per dollar. And he's up at the top on DraftKings, 3 points per dollar. He's fairly cheap. And number 2 on FanDuel at 2.2 points per dollar. He's 5.2 on FanDuel. He's a terrific price over there. And then Mark Andrews, just don't fade this guy. The Chargers have really struggled this season stopping tight ends. And I'm not chasing last week. He does have 5 grabs in 4 straight games, hit the century mark twice, and double-digit fantasy points in 4 straight games. The Chargers allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to the tight end position, 4 touchdowns, 2 tight ends already. That's it. We got a whole lot more over at FTNdaily.com, FTNbets.com, and FTNfantasy.com, including some hockey picks over there. Have a great weekend. Hopefully the winners are yours, as my friend Gabe Morency likes to say. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.